Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into episode 2 of the Elevate Compliance podcast. We've got a great show for you today, including an interview with Kirk Teachout of the 7-Figure Dentist Program. But before we get into the interview, let's take a moment to appreciate good old Rocky Top. If you're not a fan of college baseball, you may not know that last night, June 24th, 2024, the Tennessee Volunteers won the College Baseball World Series in a fantastic Game 3 where they led off with a home run and never looked back. The whole series was just a great nail-biter of moments. It was awesome. There were some great outfield catches, stolen bases, wild pitches, the whole shebang, like everything you could want from a 3-game baseball series. Tennessee did lose the first game on Saturday, but they came back to force a Game 3, and last night it was awesome. It was the first time in 25 years that a number 1 seed won the final, breaking the so-called curse of the 1 seed. But I have to give credit where it's due. Texas A&M played 3 really good games. Against anyone other than the best team in the nation, A&M would have won all 3 of them. They were just great. They played so well. They were a really interesting, charming team. In the first game, they were talking about how the pitchers in the bullpen would all warm up together instead of kind of sending one relief pitcher out there one by one to kind of get warmed up. They all go out there together, cheer each other on, and tease each other. And it's a really cool team mentality that just sort of happened organically. So really a charming team. And in that first game, they had me nervous because they came out and took control of that first game quick, cashed in on some early mistakes Tennessee was making. It was clear both teams had a lot of I guess probably jitters, a lot of very high energy for being in the World Series final. But Tennessee did what winners do, and that is they endured. They stuck it out despite losing that first game. They were able to hold on and win the second game, and then Game 3 last night, they won by just a single run. So it was just an awesome season, fantastic series, really great way to close out the 2024 college baseball season. So that was really awesome. And as a huge Tennessee Volunteers fan, it was really fun. Peyton Manning was there taking some pictures. The head coach for the Tennessee Volunteers basketball team and the football team, both head coaches were out there too, and taking pictures with Tony Vitello, the head coach for the Vols baseball team. So just an awesome night. It was really fun. Great way to start off the week. So with all that said, though, we can get down to business now. As many of you are probably aware, Elevate Compliance is a sponsor of Dental Nachos. And this week, something happened on Nachos that I'd never seen happen before. It was really fascinating. Being a sponsor on Dental Nachos, we're encouraged to, the term they use is JBY, just be yourself, right? And engage with people and comment. And so it's really awesome being a sponsor of Nachos. But last Saturday, someone posted a very authentic story about themselves and offered a template for how to grow revenue in the dental practice. And within just a few hours, the post had literally multiple hundreds of comments. And I checked it again this morning, and there were almost 850 comments on this post. Which is pretty amazing. And the person who posted the story is Kirk Teachout, who happens to be my guest today and has actually become a really good friend. We spoke on the phone yesterday. He had a question about HIPAA. I was able to kind of help him with that. And I've gotten to know him and his wife a little bit, which is awesome. So please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Kirk Teachout of the 7-Figure Dentist Program. All right, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here with me. I've got Kirk Teachout as my guest today. He runs a super successful practice in Covington, Tennessee. Now, Kirk, a couple of questions. I know Covington is a suburb of Memphis, right?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and I used to live in Athens, Tennessee. I don't know if you know where Athens is.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So about halfway between Chattanooga and Knoxville. I'm a big Tennessee Vols fan, if I can get the ball to show up there. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Big Volunteers fan. So are you, what are you? Are you Vandy fan or Memphis or what?
I'm actually a Michigan fan.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Awesome. Right on. So
Yeah.
cheating on the SEC a little bit down there. That's all right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're also Arkansas fans because we're from Arkansas.
Okay.
So my wife was an Arkansas fan. So naturally, I'm an Arkansas fan. But
Sure.
I grew up in Arkansas, but my dad was from Michigan. So I'm a huge Michigan fan.
Okay. Right on. Awesome. Awesome. Well, very good. Well, obviously, in addition to being office manager extraordinaire in your wife's practice, I know that you've also got your own company going as well, 7-Figure Dentist Program, which is part of fourth quarter coaching. So tell us a little bit about that so that our listeners can kind of get to know you and what you do a little bit better.
Sure, sure. Yeah. So, I mean, really it comes down to what I've seen my wife go through in the last 7 years that she's been out of dental school. And I saw, this huge thing of like, okay, you're spending $500,000 to learn the clinical side, and that's awesome. You come out, sure, maybe you're not a master, but you're at least competent and doing a good job. And then you go out into the world, and if you do buy a practice, like practice ownership is like the clinical side anyways, maybe 15, 20% of what you're doing. And there's this huge hole of lack of knowledge of the business side.
Hmm.
And I was like, man, people are just not equipped. And the more I talk with people on Instagram and through different forums, like they're just not ready.
Hmm.
And they're burning out really quick because they're focusing on CE thinking that that's what's going to bring in things. And that's a 20% return. And then you're like, oh, but if you actually focus on the business side, like that's a 80% return because now your business is running better and you can focus on the dentistry.
Love it.
So I really created the seven figure dentist program because my wife and I, which kudos to my wife because she is like so much. I mean, she's not really the face of what we're doing, but she will be
Good.
eventually. But she has really helped a ton in just helping us create this huge practice of a seven figure practice, only working 3 days a week, just doing bread and butter dentistry. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, you guys are doing huge cases. Oh, you're doing a ton of implants. Oh, you're doing denture." Like, no, just crown and bridge, restorative dentistry, no dentures in a rural area where we're heavy PPO.
Hmm.
And, we were like, man, okay, how can we help other doctors empower them in their practice to understand the business side a little bit more? So that's really why I created this program to
Awesome.
help people.
That's awesome. And yeah, so one of my follow-up questions was going to be, what kind of inspired you? Obviously, that's a big inspiration. So, yeah, so talk a little bit about that. Dropping down to 3 days a week, that's pretty cool. So, is it usually like first half of the week? Does it kind of alternate? What does your typical week look like?
Sure. So right now, technically we're there 3.5 days. So after COVID, so we bought 6 months prior to COVID.
Okay.
And then the whole world shut down,
Yeah.
for 2 months. So we were shut down for 2 months. So in that time, we really focused on what do we want to do and how do we want to do it. Because as business owners, like a lot of times we know what we need to do, we just don't make the time for it. But at that
Sure.
time, we had the time.
Yeah.
So we asked the team, like, hey, if we cut out a half day on Thursday, what does that look like? Like, are you guys okay with that? We're not going to pay you more, but we'll do it and see what happens. They're like, sure, let's do it. Like, okay, cool. And there was a night and day difference of the culture and the energy level of everybody coming in from the patients as well as the team.
That's rad.
Yeah. And it came down to Parkinson's law, where you fill the time that you allot for the task. So we're like, okay, cool. So now we're more productive because we have more energy. We're
Mhm.
fitting things in that normally, like, even though we cut out 3 hours and out of a Thursday, we actually saw a 40% jump in our production and collections.
Very nice.
And we were like, okay. So when my wife went on maternity leave with our third child the next year, um, we had an associate doctor come in temporarily. And for 3 weeks, she had never done in her practice more than $6,000 a day as a whole.
Okay.
We're like, okay, well, it's tough because we do more than that, like just my wife.
Yeah.
And so, like, how are we going to do this? But anything is better than nothing at this point. So she was coming in, and for 3 weeks straight, she did $15,000 days every single day. And we're like, okay, something's here.
Yeah.
So there's a system here that's working, and that's cool. And she since asked, like, that associate was like, look, can you give me the systems that you have? I'm like, sure, here, use this, do this. And I emailed it to her. She's like, awesome. Now she's doing really well. And so like,
Nice.
okay, cool. So we have this system. And when my wife came back from maternity leave, she was like, why don't I just come back at 3 days? So in Tennessee, like they only need to have an exam once a year.
Okay.
So we're able to not come in on Thursdays if we don't want to,
Sure.
and our hygienists can see them. So our team is still there half day on Thursdays,
Okay.
but we're not always there. So we work Monday through Wednesday, 8:30 to 4:30 with an hour lunch. and are still able to create a seven-figure practice doing that. Because when you break down the numbers, it's really not that difficult to do $7,000 a day from the doctor and
Hmm.
1,500 per hygienist.
Hmm. Awesome. Yeah, that's fantastic. And I know from talking with you a little bit before the podcast, I know that your background's actually in music, which I'm kind of interested to hear how that
Yeah.
transition. Obviously, being close to Nashville, I assume that maybe Nashville has something to do with your work. Did you ever work in Nashville or live in
I
Nashville?
did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did. I've done a lot of work more in the rock scene, which is
Okay.
more of underground in Nashville. But yeah, so a lot of rock, a lot of pop. I stayed away from country. I think I may have done one country record.
Okay.
But yeah, I just did a lot of rock, a lot of pop. I toured in a band. I played for many years. That's why guitars are behind me right now.
Right
Um,
on. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
um, when we had our first child 7 years ago, though, my wife was like, "Look, you can't be on the road anymore if we're gonna have kids." So I transitioned to be a producer and managing artists, and so I did that, and I learned how to scale a company, doing nursery rhymes, ironically, for the
Okay.
top 5 YouTube channels in the world. So I
Nice.
created a business and learned how to scale and really do the more of the operations side. I was like, okay, cool. So how do we do this in the dental practice?
Sure.
Because 5 years ago, when she was like, I'm ready to own, like, will you help me? I was like, sure. I have no industry experience there, but
Mhm.
sure, like I'll help.
Yeah.
And so for the last 5 years, we've been really focusing on like, okay, what works, what doesn't work. And from my outside industry experience, trying to create raving fans with something that's so subjective that
Yeah.
I only love um, through an experience, through the shows,
Hmm.
has helped me tremendously. And now trying to create a patient experience that is needed, not just something
Sure.
that only we love.
Yeah.
So, that's the goal every single time, creating an experience from front to back and out.
That's awesome. Well, I have a kind of a similar trajectory, not in music, but actually in film. So
Nice.
I used to work for NBC. I don't know if you ever watched the show Grimm. You ever watched the show
Yeah.
Grimm? Yeah, I worked on Grimm for 3 seasons and a few other shows, The Man in the High Castle on Amazon Prime, and a couple other
Nice.
shows. And it was actually through that I came to know the owner of the former company that I used to work for that got me all of my 10 years experience in the industry
There you
because
go.
I was loaned out to film a video on how to properly disinfect a dental operatory. And I said, well, I don't know what any of those words mean, but that sounds fun. Let's do it. And so
Yeah.
it was kind of like a before and after. You do it the wrong way, and then you do it the right way kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just fell in love with the industry. The people that I met that day on the set, and just it's just such a fun industry. Everybody knows each other. It's intimate.
Yeah.
You get some different personalities out there, but that's what makes it fun. That's what makes it exciting.
Yeah.
So, in your experience in your office with your wife and the business that you run, what are some of the challenges that you see facing the industry today? And this can be a broad range. Obviously, I know you're zeroed in on the practice growth side and the understanding the numbers. That I've watched some of the content you've put out. You're big about the numbers, and that's huge. What's maybe other than that some of the bigger challenges that you see across the industry in general?
Man, I mean, I feel like it's a lack of innovation and honestly ignorance, which is not a negative word. It's just not
Sure.
knowing what you don't know,
Hmm.
right? And like I said, like you've spent $500,000 as a dentist to learn the clinical side. Well, you have not spent near enough time on the business side.
Yeah.
You may have had one semester of a business class in dental school, like maybe. So, you don't know what you don't know.
Hmm.
And so, like for instance, with compliance, like unless you know that you need to check your fire extinguishers every year and monitor them every month, and like in order to stay compliant, like you can get dinged for that,
Yeah.
like from OSHA. So it's just like, okay, well, if you come in and you buy a practice and you don't realize that there are three things that you need to really do from OSHA standards, then that's a big deal.
Hmm.
Um,
And I do see
and
that a lot. I do see that a lot.
yeah, yeah, and OSHA does too,
Yeah.
which is why
Yep.
why they keep doing it. But but that's the thing is like you didn't get into dental school to know that there are regulations and different things with HIPAA and all sorts of things. Like sure, like it's confidential information,
Yeah.
but you don't know what you need to do to protect it. And that there are certain things you have to do that you're just not taught that. in
Mhm.
school. So, from an ignorant standpoint, like you just don't know what you don't know. And even for outside of compliance, same thing with numbers, right? It's like
Sure.
you don't know what numbers you need to focus on to maximize your practice. You don't know how to approach a patient the right way through communication skills. Like there's just a difference between dental school and the actual world,
Yeah.
and it's just ignorance, which is okay.
Yep.
But
Totally.
trying to find somebody who has been there and or you can figure it out through trial and error is fine, but you may pay a lot more for it. um, is okay, but the lack of innovation too.
Yeah.
Um, you
Well,
know,
that kind of goes along with my platform.
yeah,
I know that you and your wife, have joined the Elevate platform, and I love that. I appreciate that. I'll do my shameless plug in here in just a second about that.
yeah.
But that's one of the things that I wanted to innovate because I see so many companies out there that do compliance, and it's all kind of boring. I mean, no offense to
Oh,
all
it's
of my other
so boring.
compliance friends and family in the industry and everything that we do, but you're taking a subject that, let's be honest, people don't really want to listen to it. People don't really want to have to do it, right? Especially the dentists they want to get back to doing what they do, the clinical work that they've learned how to do. So that's why, like you said, innovation. When you said that immediately wrong with me because that's what I'm trying to do with the platform is really innovate, bring it to the current day, make it fun, make it easy. The nice thing is I always like to say because I didn't write the laws, I get to make fun of them. And as
Yes.
you saw from doing the training, I like to insert humor as much as I can in there and just make something that most people dread a little bit more enjoyable. So yeah,
Yeah.
and I appreciate you talking about the innovation side of it and kind of the way that the industry has grown and we're sort of in that next stage, I think, of what comes next for the industry
Yeah.
abroad, and be it a platform like this or be it a system of coaching that's maybe a little bit unique, a little bit different than what people have seen before.
Right.
So I will ask for, since I've got you here, I will ask for a little bit of a testimonial from you just to tell my viewers,
Yeah.
listeners, what you thought of the training, what your team thought. Did it have impact? Was there anything that you were like, oh my gosh, we never even knew we didn't know we needed to do that? Give me a little
Sure.
information about what you thought of the training.
Sure. No, that yeah, and the training, like you were saying, is right. Like bringing a little humor to it. I heard more laughs during that training than I ever have. Yeah, because most of the time, and going through, like I worked at a bank one time, and going through those compliance, videos from the '90s is like, oh my goodness. Or going through even CPR training, right? They're like, get the AED. Like it was like, okay, cool. It's like this is ridiculous. So to for you to be able to bring humor um and also simplify a lot of it, because I feel like because we've had multiple different compliance
Mhm.
companies, and really it's about simplifying it to where we understand it. We don't understand half of it because it's just different. It's not in our nature to understand it. And so to be able to simplify it in a funny way, in a humorous way, to where like, oh man, yeah, we've never even thought about that before, but it's a good thing we were doing it. So like a lot of what you were saying was like it was confirming what we had been doing. We just didn't even know we were doing it.
Sure.
So which was really nice. But still, like, and most of the compliance stuff is they get all of it crammed into 1 hour. And even though like yes, we want to get it done as quickly as possible because nobody wants to do it, there was so much more information in how you presented it and
Yes.
the questions and different things that you kind of prompted to where and we're all competitive at our office. So like to get to the final questionnaire and then we got like an 85%, we're like, no, like let's go back and do it again.
Nice.
Um, so I feel like it was more lighthearted, way easier, more user friendly, and interactive, which was great versus just sitting there and just like, okay, I'm watching an hour video. At the end of it, I'm going to do a 10-point questionnaire and then it's done. Like, cool, we got
And
it
that's if
checked
you
off,
make
but
it
we
through
didn't.
without passing out.
Yes, and we didn't learn anything.
Sure.
So, like, we actually learned a lot during that process. Our team actually learned a lot during that process. And sure, it was 3 hours instead of one, but still, like, it was very important from a business perspective to make sure that not only we understood what we were doing and or doing wrong or right, and our team understands it,
Mhm.
which is what we have to focus on because even though our team may do it, they have to understand that their butt's on the line too.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I do appreciate that, and I'm glad that you and the team found it so impactful. And I especially love hearing that everybody was like, "Oh, I got to go through and take that again," which is
Yes.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
Because and just out of curiosity, when you did it, I think if I'm not mistaken, did you break it up like over 3 days? You did like
Yeah.
a lunch, a lunch, a lunch, or something like that? It
Yep.
was awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we always bring in lunch. We pay for it. It's worth, like sure we're paying the team, but it's worth, spending 40, $50 to feed your team
Yeah.
and and to get them to go through it. And yeah, I mean, we just made sure we made time for it.
Awesome. Right on. All right. Well, we're going to take just a quick break. We'll be back in just a few minutes, and we will continue talking with Kirk Teachout.
Elevate Compliance is a proud sponsor of Dental Nachos. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay up to date on everything we offer and our ever expanding library of course content. You can also check us out at elevatecompliance.net.
Welcome back, everybody. Again, I am here with Kirk Teachout of Fourth Quarter Coaching. And Kirk, we talked a little bit about, the coaching and what you've done in your wife's practice. I know, we got to talk about some fun stuff too. This can't all just be compliance
Yeah.
and all that good stuff. I know from talking with you a little bit beforehand that you're a big foodie. So obviously being in
Yeah.
Memphis, I think the immediate assumption is you got to love barbecue. Am I correct in
Yes.
that? Okay, yeah, I
Oh,
figured
yes.
so. What are some other of your favorite go-tos? Because I'm a big foodie, so we got to spend a segment talking about
Oh
food.
man. Well, and ironically, like right before this, I was on a call with somebody in Scottsdale, Arizona,
Okay.
and like we've gone to a couple CEs there, and La Hacienda at the Fairmont, the
Mhm.
best steak I've ever had,
Okay.
and it's a Mexican restaurant.
Yeah,
So, but it was a fillet cooked to perfection on top of three cheese enchiladas.
I'm in.
So good. It was
Sign me
so
up.
good. It was so good with homemade guac made right at the table.
Nice.
It was so good. But as far as Memphis goes, man, there's so many places. Like everybody goes to Rendezvous because that's where, the Prince went. That's where all the famous people go. But to
Sure.
be honest, like unless you just get like the sausage and cheese, like you're not really getting great barbecue. So,
Okay.
um, I would personally just go to Central Barbecue. There's somebody actually in Covington that has better barbecue out in the middle of nowhere.
Nice.
And it's awesome. Mid-South Barbecue, huge plug to them. We get it at least once a week. Um, but I don't know, man. There's tons of places. I mean, really. I mean, between I know it's a chain, but Texas Day Brazil is there.
Hmm.
We have Flight, which is a local restaurant, which is really great. It's high end, but it's really nice. Anywhere really in Midtown is so good. But man, I, the food is really why we stayed.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. It's just so good. There's so many different places and really
Yeah.
so many like just hole in the wall places, mom and pop restaurants that
Uh,
you can find that just are just amazing.
yeah. I haven't been to Memphis in probably 15 years. I need to get back there.
Yeah.
Especially now I got to stop by and visit Covington Family Dental too.
Yeah.
And pop in and say hi. But yeah, I definitely need to make it back out there. I love barbecue, and my I actually have a lot of family in Missouri, and so Kansas City is obviously another big barbecue city. But it's just so different, the
Yeah.
Memphis dry rubs versus the sauces you have on the plate in Kansas City. I love it so much. What about the West Coast or East Coast? Do you ever go to the coasts at all for CE or for trips or anything? And what
Yeah.
seafood?
Yeah, so when I was in a band, right, we went out on tour to the West Coast and we
Okay.
went to Atascadera in Central California.
Yeah.
And there was a place there, I forget where it was, but we were playing a gig on the pier and there was this little restaurant in the very end and we were watching seals while we were eating fresh seafood and a
Yeah. Yeah.
shark actually ate one while we were eating. Um,
Oh,
but yeah, so we were like, "Oh,
everybody's like,
this is like really
what?
real."
Wow.
Um,
That's wild.
but but yeah, no, I love fresh seafood. Anytime, like we love going to the beach in the Gulf. I love grouper. Absolutely
Yeah.
love grouper. I wish I could get it here in the central US,
I know.
but I just can't. But yeah, East Coast, same thing. We go to Charlotte a lot for CE.
Okay.
Tons of great food there
Yeah.
too. Man, I don't know.
Savannah.
I
You
mean,
ever go to
yeah,
Savannah?
we've never been to Savannah actually.
Oh,
So
you gotta
we
go.
Yeah,
But
we try to, but man, there's just so many places. We've been up to Washington State, and there's some really great mom and pop like pizza places and stuff in the mountains, like different places. It's so
yeah.
good. I don't know where do you like to visit like throughout there?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I got family all over the country. So you mentioned Scottsdale. My wife was actually born and raised in Chandler, Arizona, which is
Yeah,
just not that far from there. So, very familiar with Hacienda and the other restaurants there. I personally, I was actually recently asked this question by a friend. If there was a particular like ethnicity of food or type of food that went away forever, what would be the worst one to lose? To me, that would be sushi. I am a
mm,
huge sushi fan. I could eat sushi every meal, every day. And the weirder and
yep,
slimier it is, the better. People are sometimes they're like, I like my California rolls and that's it. I'm like, no, give me a big old piece of raw eel on top. I love it. So yeah, I'm a big sushi guy. Couldn't live without sushi. But I also do love great barbecue. And again, with my family in Missouri and having
yeah,
lived in Tennessee, I'm trying to think of some places that I used to go to in Knoxville because I haven't lived in Knoxville for 10 years or 12 years now. But I'm trying to remember some of the places we used to go there. I don't know. But
I know
anyway,
I'm the
yeah,
same way. I can't
yeah,
remember.
it's been a while. My brain's not in Tennessee anymore as much as I wish it was. But yeah, well, next time if you do come back to Washington State, that's where we're based here in Seattle, and so if you do come back, yeah, stop by and yeah, we'll take you to some really good places to eat. And you have 3 kids, did you say?
4.
4, and they're all under the age of 7, you said?
Yes.
Wow, that's a must be a
We're
busy
not going to be
place.
bringing them to Washington State anytime
No,
soon.
probably not for a little while. I get that. Yeah, not
Yeah.
a lot of Disney like attractions up here to bring the little ones,
Yes.
but
But I mean,
um,
we went to Clay Ellum, which is why we were up there. So
okay. What were you doing in
we
Cle
just
Elum? Out of curiosity.
so yeah, so my wife was just like, I've never been to the mountains. I'd been to the mountains, so I was like, okay, well, let's go to the mountains. I just got an Airbnb. She was like, the only
Nice.
stipulation is I need a jacuzzi looking at the mountains. I was like, okay. So we went in February. I found this one place out in the middle of nowhere by Clay Ellum that had no cell service. We had to have a 4-wheel drive to get up there because it was snowing to get up there.
Uh huh.
And it
Awesome.
was gorgeous. It was
Yeah.
so much fun. And we were like, okay, we've got to get back here.
Yeah. Well, I live on the other side of the mountains. Cle Elum's just immediately on the east side of the Cascades. I live, Seattle and everything's on the west side of the Cascades,
Right.
but um, this state is just awesome. I love it here.
Yeah.
I do love this state. I love Tennessee too. In fact, my heart is still kind of in East Tennessee. I love Tennessee. I love the Smokies and but the mountains here, they're just different. It's just different. And the food
Yeah.
is just amazing. So much great seafood here and all that good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, awesome. Well, that's great. The other thing that I had to bring up because I am a huge gamer myself, I saw that you're a big Fortnite and Rocket League player. So when you put those on there, I think I can't remember if you wrote LOL on the sheet when you put those on
Yes,
there,
I
or
did.
just because I know that sometimes the view of those games is kind of
Yeah.
memeish, which I appreciate. But what's you can't put down? Like what's the game that you just addicted to? Could play it all.
Dude, I have to play. So it depends on how much time. That's the reason why I have both on there because if I only have, 10 or 15 minutes, I can play 2 or 3 games of Rocket League.
Sure, totally.
Um, versus Fortnite, like I really need a solid hour in order to play a couple games because, one game, if I'm doing well, it's going to take 20, 30 minutes.
Sure.
So, and with a new season coming out lately, I'm so addicted right now.
Is this the Lego?
Uh,
Is this the Lego season or something, or
no,
did I
no, no,
miss that?
no. So Lego came out the
Okay.
last season with the
Okay.
Olympians, and then they just put out. Oh man, it's kind of like Twisted Metal. So like you
Okay.
run around in cars and you can modify them with spiked bumpers
Oh,
and
that's
and
cool.
grenade launchers on them and all sorts of stuff. So
Okay.
I'm really nerding out right now, but it's fine.
Right on, right on. Well, my go-to is Helldivers 2. I'm a
Okay,
big
yeah,
Helldivers, and yeah, it is. I played a lot of the first one on console, but I got this one on PC, and I don't know if you played either of them. The first one was like
no,
a top-down, it was like sky down.
yep,
This one is over the shoulder, and you're just in it. You're just in the high flying action all the time, and it's awesome.
nice,
But the missions, yeah, usually take like 40, 45 minutes, so you got to have some time to commit to it. But
yeah.
Yeah, and but yeah, I have a buddy whose little brother is ranked, I guess, in Rocket League. He has something like 3,000 hours in Rocket League or something like that. So
Yeah.
watching him play is always hilarious because he just schools all the noobs, which is
Yeah.
pretty hilarious. So
Oh yeah.
well, awesome. What about an all-time favorite game? Just out of curiosity, like not one that you're addicted to now, but just one that you could go back to and play again and again, considered your favorite.
Oh man, I'm a Halo fan.
Okay, the first one, Combat Evolved, to the original.
Yeah, yeah. The original Halo 2, though, I mean, that was when it really evolved because
Yeah,
that was where we could create random maps. And
you could have two
because
one-handed weapons. Yeah,
yeah, like and really like creating like they allowed the user to create custom maps to see what people were doing. And like we created SWAT before SWAT was a thing with no shields.
yeah,
We
yeah,
created zombies without zombies being an actual thing. And so they took what people were doing, like, okay, now let's make Halo 3 with those variants.
yeah,
And it was just like, oh, okay, cool. Let's all
yeah,
get in a warthog. Let's go in a circle. Let's see how we can just hit hammers and just do all sorts of stuff. So yeah, I
yeah.
mean, Halo through and through. Like I was a Call of Duty fan, but Halo was,
Just the universe and
yeah, more detached, right?
yeah.
Which is why I ended up evolving into Destiny, which was like
Okay.
Halo with free world.
Yep.
And but then once again, your battles got to where they were 6 to 8 hours long, and you had to have people with you. I was like, I can't do this,
Yeah.
guys. Like this is wasting time.
Yeah. 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 Right on. Awesome. Well, for me, I had a buddy over last night and we were just talking about old N64 games. I think Ocarina of
Mario
Time.
Kart.
Okay,
Yes.
Mario Kart
Okay.
2, of course. Yeah, the classics,
Yeah.
right? Mario 64,
Yeah.
Mario Kart,
Sure.
Smash.
Yeah.
And then but yeah, I think my personal favorite, maybe of all time, would have to probably be Ocarina of Time. In fact, I've got it's laying around here somewhere. My brother bought me an actual ocarina. It's around here somewhere that I used to
Nice.
display. I don't know what I did with it, but anyway, yeah. So those, and then personally, actually, Kingdom Hearts is another one that I
Yeah.
really love. The original. After that,
Yeah.
they kind of
Right.
got a little wacko, but the first one was awesome. So
Yeah. Oh, I remember. Yeah.
yep, right on, right on. All right, cool. Well, we'll take one more short break and then we'll come back and we'll talk about a few more things before we get ready to wrap up.
That's awesome.
This episode of the Elevate Compliance Podcast is brought to you by Fourth Quarter Coaching and the Seven Figure Dentist Program. Learn more about how Kirk Teachout strategies can improve revenue in your practice, reduce stress, and even reduce overall working hours by visiting the7figuredentist.com. That's the7figuredentist.com.
All right. Welcome back, Kirk. Thanks for being here with me for this time and talking some food and some video games, business stuff,
Yeah.
and all of that. Before we wrap up, though, I do have to get in a little bit of compliance talk because we are Elevate Compliance, not Elevate Video Games or Food, as much as I wish we could be. But I know from, like you were talking earlier about how your team did the training, and I'm so glad that you found it impactful and that everybody was having a good time doing it. Couple of other little questions though. What is a concern that you have in general about compliance, sort of abroad in the industry? Like I know you talked about, innovation is something that we really need in the industry, things like that. What's a concern that you have for some of the clients that you see, or just practices in general that you wish people knew more about?
Sure. It depends on the personality, right? Because I feel like,
Yeah.
I think Dr. Bicuspid posted the other day about how like there was a doctor cleaning chairs with paint thinner and like not sterilizing stuff and using hand sanitizer to like on gloves and stuff. Like there's things like that,
Yeah.
that people are trying to cut cost or they just don't know, right? Which I don't know how paint thinner even helps that. But anyway,
Well, it smells like alcohol. It smells strong, so it
yeah,
must be strong, I guess.
golly. Yeah. So, really it really is coming down to a lot of what we were talking about, right? Is ignorance.
Mhm.
It's either ignorance or just sheer neglect. So and there's kind of two forms or really two sides of the coin to that. It's like either if you're trying to cut costs and be as conscious as you can and you really hate like spending money, then you're going to fall more on the side of neglect. Like, do I really have to? Am I really going to get audited? Am I real like do I really
Yeah.
have to do that? I'm like, well, here's an analogy. How about you drive around in your car without insurance for a while and see what happens? It's
Yeah.
like the first time you get in a wreck, then
Or
you're
pulled
done.
over or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, you're toast. Like,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's a huge issue here in Memphis with that. right?
Right.
And because that's why you need uninsured motorists like crazy, because so many just hit and run here.
Ugh.
And or they just don't have insurance, and like, well, great, now I'm up a creek and I've done everything I needed to do. But back to the dental field, I feel like a lot of people that are trying to cut costs, they're trying to, they probably do the same thing with the IRS, like really hug the gray areas, right?
Yeah.
Um, but just like, look, it's better to be above reproach and just do your due diligence, because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Hmm.
Okay. Regardless of whether it's an employee who left and now is disgruntled and is going to complain to OSHA or HIPAA or
Which is the
whatever,
number
like
one
even if
reason
you
for
didn't,
anybody listening. That's number one.
right, right. And or just somebody like out in a rural area, you think, oh, nobody's going to come out here, but one day they're going to blanket this whole area and go after everybody who has been here for 40 years and hasn't done a thing. So, like, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Mhm.
And so, trying to make sure that you fall under, like, making sure you've done your due diligence, just know it's part of life, it's part of business. Every single person has to do it,
Mhm.
and not risking it. Because at the end of the day, like, they can shut you down.
Yeah.
And then you're really up a creek and you can't, do business as usual.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm sure you and your wife have heard from many patients when they come in. I don't really like to go to the dentist. I'm just here because I have to be, right? Well, that's what I hear from dental offices all the time is we don't
yeah,
really like to do compliance training, but we're kind of here because we have to. And you're right that, if you don't invest the time and the money, it's going to cost you a lot more in the long run. And it's not just about the risk of them shutting you down. I once had a client, I was training and I was 40 minutes into a 6 hour lecture. Okay. I'm in their office and I'm going to be there talking for 6 hours. Okay.
Woo.
And I get about 40 minutes in, we're talking about HIPAA, and he puts his hand up and he goes, Will, I'm going to stop you right there. I'm not going to do any of the things you're telling me right now. So I'm going, okay. My first thought is, then why'd you hire me? Why am I here? But I didn't say that. Of course, I'm just kind of sitting there. He goes, look, I've been practicing for 40 years. If I ever get in trouble, I'll just stand in front of the judge and say, Your Honor, how much do I write the check out for?
Oh, oh,
So the best part about this story, the reason I love to share this story is because at the time I'm thinking, okay, I guess I'm leaving. One of the women at the table turned and looked at him, and if looks could kill, he'd have killed over right then. I mean, she gave him and she turned back to me and she goes, well, you know what, Will, the rest of us would like to hear what you have to say. So why don't you go ahead and continue?
oh,
Found out shortly thereafter the class was over, it was his wife. And while he was the dentist, she was definitely the one who ran the office. And she and I
oh,
got along great, and the rest of the team. And he ended up apologizing. I don't know if he did that on his own accord or if she made him at the end, but it was all fine. But that's very much the mentality, is
yeah,
I guess I'll just take my chances, because the reality is it doesn't happen that often, the investigations. And
sure,
but neither do accidents if you still want to get insurance, right? And just because accidents don't
yeah,
happen every day doesn't mean you don't get insurance. And so I think it's kind of the same thing. So yeah, and I understand that the mentality towards compliance is that nobody enjoys it, which again is like we talked about earlier, one of the reasons why I try to make it interactive and fun. And I'm just glad to hear that it's been impactful for you in the office there. uh
hugely, yeah,
yeah, that's great. And so, before we get ready to wrap up, I know you're a fan of mentorship, and we've talked a little bit about that before the podcast. And I've
yeah,
had some just incredible mentors in my life. In fact, I would not be where I am doing what I'm doing if it weren't for some of the just great people in my life. What are some things that you've learned in recent years from some great mentors that you've had, and advice that we could just sort of leave the listeners with, here at the end of the podcast?
sure. Well, I'm gonna start with not recent years, but really my first mentor,
Okay.
in business anyway, because I grew up with a single mom, 3 kids. I was the oldest of it. So like I didn't really have much of a mentor because my mom was working, right? So I was the mentor to my sisters, and I was like, okay, I don't know anything, and so that's all I knew growing up until I got into college, and somebody really started pouring into me. I started helping him with this business, and we went to this conference, and there was this guy that was where I wanted to be. He had he had done more than $2.5 million in passive income for the last 25 years. And I'm like, okay, how do you do this? And so I had an introduction with him, and the guy who had poured into me previously was just like, look, his name's Kirk. He'd love to hear from you and talk with you and just sit down with you. And so the guy came up to me, and I didn't know this, and I went to go shake his hand, and he was like, Kirk, and I hadn't even introduced myself at this point. Kirk, you're gonna fail. I was like, oh, great. Well, I'm
That's a
Kirk.
great first
It's nice.
message.
Yes, nice to meet you. But he
Yeah.
said, Kirk, you're gonna fail. Fail faster. And that has stuck with me for the last 15 plus years of like, man, I didn't know fully what it meant at that time. I, I was just like, what is he telling me right now? But now it's like, man, yes, the road of entrepreneurship, the road of business ownership even is through failure. We have to put in the reps, we have to put in the time
Yeah.
and be able and not be scared of failure as long as it's mitigated, right? Not failure through an
You'll
audit
learn
or
from it.
whatever.
You'll learn from it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you learn from it. So you have
Yeah.
successes and learning moments,
Mhm.
right? And so by failing faster, I'm going to see success faster than everybody else. So I'm going to be able to do it by putting in more work more quickly. And it's changed the way I approach things. It's changed the way that my work ethic that I didn't have growing up, but just failing forward all the time and learning from it.
Forward.
And
I
like,
love that.
okay, cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. I mentioned, like we've both talked about, we both have had great mentors in our lives. And one of the great mentors that I've had, he used to say, what did we, and I'll leave out the expletive here, but he would say, what did we F up this week? And that was just a great thing because you learn so much from all the failures. And what did we mess up that we can fix and do better next time? And applying that to life in general is just going to get you far in life. So
Yeah.
well, Kirk, thanks so much for your time. You've been great. I really appreciate you being on the podcast with me, and I hope that everybody gets an opportunity to work with you. One more time, plug your company, plug what you do, where they can find you, and how they can learn more about the fourth quarter coaching and seven-figure dentist program.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they can hit me up on Instagram at Kirk Teachout. I'm sure they'll be in the notes. So, I mean, that's where I primarily go everywhere. I mean, if they want, they can go to treatmentblueprint.com and they can download the exact verbiage that my wife uses to close 86% of treatment. And does a great job. And, they'll be able to get into the universe at that point and kind of go from there. But yeah.
Awesome. All right, Kirk, thanks very much. Have a great one.
Awesome. You too.
Did you know? With Elevate Compliance, access to digital OSHA, HIPAA, and infection control manuals and forms are just a click away. If you're curious about how the Elevate Compliance platform can help you with your practice's compliance, send us an email with any questions to info@elevatecompliance.net or follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. I really enjoyed talking with Kirk. He and I have yet to play a round of Rocket League, but I think that'll need to happen soon. Hey, if any of you out there are gamers, let us know, either in the comments of wherever you find this podcast, send me a DM on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn, or send me an email at will@elevatecompliance.net. I'm a huge gamer, and I would really love to connect with more dental people who are also fans of gaming. Right now, I'm actually going through Starfield, and I know I'm a little late to the party on that one, but as I understand, there were some changes made in some recent updates that make the game a little bit more playable than it was at launch. So I am kind of happy to see that those changes have come through. I'm also a really big Helldivers 2 player. I just finished the Viper Commando Warbond, which is some pretty neat stuff. I'm a huge fan of the exosuits and walking around, blowing up bugs and stuff, which is awesome. So, but anyway, I'd love to chat more about gaming, food, or just generally whatever. So feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk with you. And that's all I've got for you today on the Elevate Compliance podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Kirk, thank you again for joining me. And stay tuned for our next episode in a couple of weeks. Take care, everybody.